All right, let's talk about that feeling. You know the one, where you and your team are just swamped by endless rules, processes, and just so much noise. If that sounds familiar, you are definitely in the right place, because today we are going to dive into a really powerful way to cut right through all that chaos and build a team that's not just agile, but incredibly steady too. I mean, we've all seen this play out, right? You've got two options. Option A is the 100-page manual, the one nobody ever reads, just gathering dust on a shelf. And then you have option B, a clear, simple agreement that people actually use. Now, the choice between those two? It seems pretty obvious. But actually getting to that clear agreement, well, that's where things can get a little tricky. So how do we do it? How do we actually get to that clear agreement? Well, the answer is something called a compact operating system. And it's a framework that's been designed from the ground up to be the total opposite of all that noise and bureaucracy that just grinds great teams to a halt. Just think about that name for a second, a compact operating system. It's such a perfect analogy, right? It's just like the operating system on your phone or your computer. You don't actively think about it. It just runs quietly in the background, making sure everything else works smoothly. And that is exactly what this kind of system does for a team, especially when the pressure's on. And let's be super clear about this. This is not about adding more rules. It's not about more red tape or another layer of bureaucracy. The whole point here is to subtract. It's all about finding the absolute right rules, the essential few that give you the most clarity and the most effectiveness. Okay, so let's get into the nuts and bolts. How does this thing actually work? Well, the compact operating system is built on three really important pillars: rules, freedoms, and stabilizers. First up, we've got rules. And look, when I say rules, I don't mean micromanagement, not at all. These are the big, non-negotiable guidelines, the stuff that truly matters for your team's success and safety. The best way to think about it is like guardrails on a highway. They aren't telling you how to drive, they're just keeping you from going off a cliff. And what's amazing is that this frees up so much mental energy because people aren't constantly second-guessing what the most important things are. Next up, pillar 2, freedoms. Okay, this is where things get really cool. Once you set up those solid guardrails, the rules, you can then be super explicit about where people are empowered to make their own calls, to try new things, to take real ownership. And what this does is so powerful. It signals trust, it crushes uncertainty, and it basically just unleashes all that creativity and initiative that's waiting on your team. And finally, we have stabilizers. Think of these as your anchors in a storm. They're the small, predictable rhythms and routines that keep everyone steady when things get chaotic and stressful. This could be something as simple as a 5-minute check-in every morning, or maybe a specific, agreed-upon way to share urgent news. By making these little things totally automatic, you save the team's precious mental energy for the big problems that actually need their full attention. So when you put these three pieces together, you get this amazing balance. The rules create safety because everyone knows the boundaries. The freedoms invite initiative inside those boundaries, so people feel trusted and empowered. And the stabilizers, well, they provide that steady rhythm that just holds the whole thing together, especially when things get crazy. Okay, this all sounds great, but how do you actually build one for your team? Well, here's the thing. It's not a set it and forget it kind of deal. It's a living, breathing process of designing, testing, and then repeating that cycle. So let's walk through what that looks like. So first, you get your team together and you draft your version 1. Just get your initial ideas for rules, freedoms, and stabilizers down on paper. Then, and this is the most important part, you have to test it in the real world. Try it out on an actual project. See what works, and just as importantly, see what gets in the way. You have to be totally willing to throw out the stuff that fails, to sunset those rules that sounded good but just create friction. And over time, as you do this, you'll start to add in those stabilizers that really help to quiet the noise. So, after all that work, what's the big payoff? Why should you go through this whole design process? Because the result is huge. You don't just get a document, you get an agreement, a real agreement for agility. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. The goal is not a thick manual, but a clear agreement that people can remember and use under pressure. Think about that. When things go sideways, nobody's gonna go find a binder. No way. But they will remember that simple, clear agreement that they helped build themselves. And that right there is the difference between a system that just exists on paper and one that actually works when it counts. And really, that's what we're all aiming for, isn't it? A team that isn't knocked off its feet every time there's a change or a bit of pressure, a team that can stay steady, stay focused, and be incredibly effective, all because they have this simple but powerful framework to fall back on. So, I want to leave you with a question to really chew on. Think about your own team. What's one rule, one process, one piece of red tape that you could just get rid of tomorrow? Something that would immediately give your team more clarity. Because sometimes the path to becoming more agile doesn't start with what you add. It starts with what you have the courage to take away.